Hi, my name is Nena Bisceglia, and today I'm here with Stella Headley for an interview about the Black People's Day of Action as part of IRIE Dance Pioneers and Protest Project for a Living Memory Illusion. And today is Thursday the 19th of May, and we are at the Moonshot Center. Hi Stella, thank you so much for being here with us and for your time. I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to talk to you. And this is an interview about oral history, so we want to record your story. That's why I'm not going to say too much, but I'd love to have a conversation after this if you want. And could you please spell your name and surname for us? Thank you.
So I'm Stella Headley, that's Stella, and Headley is Headley.
Thank you. Okay, so just to start with a bit of personal story and background, how would you describe yourself in 1981?
In 1981?
Yeah.
In 1981, I think I'll describe myself as a young rebel, and I was very eager to have my perspectives known, and I think my dad used to call me a hustler because I used to try and think of ways to earn money to contribute towards the gas and the electric meter.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell us something about the area you grew up and where you went to school?
So I grew up in an area called Sydenham, which is in the borough of Lewisham, and opposite us was a park, Mayo Park in Sydenham, and we used to go. I have 4 sisters, so there were 5 of us, and so we used to go to that park every day. And where we lived, there was a bank where you had to climb down through some bushes. You could go around the long way, but we just used to climb through and to the main road and run across the road to the park with our 2 dogs following us. And so we knew the park, every single part of the park we knew. So we were brought up in that area. And in that area, there were a lot of big houses with gardens. And so we used to it's called scrumping, where we used to, I was the youngest, so I would be the one that would get hoisted over the fence to the apple trees or the pear trees or whatever fruit trees it was. Then the rest would follow, and then we'd pack our jumpers or bags or whatever with fruits and then run home and, I don't know, make a apple pie, or sometimes we used to collect blackberries. There seemed to be a lot of bramble around the area. There was a woods, Bakers Road woods. There was a lot of bramble and blackberries and things, so we'd collect blackberries and apples and things and make apple and blackberry crumbles, yeah. And the school I went to was not far. There was a bridge, like a small bridge halfway down Bakers Road. It was next to a church called, that's me, sorry. I forgot to turn that off. Sorry, that's a shame. I forgot to turn that off, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Did you pick up from Jacobs?
From?
Jacobs Road.
Oh, Jakers Road. Yeah, so there was a road called Dakers Road right next to where we lived, and there was some woods there called Dakers Woods. It had a big swamp in it, and we used to have a swing made out of a rope and a tyre, and we used to try and swing from one side of the swamp to the other without dropping in the swamp. and there was a lot of brambles there, so we used to collect blackberries, and with the apples that we'd scrumped, we would make blackberry and apple crumble. And yeah, we did a lot of exploring in the woods, and we used to sort of go there in the evening times, at night times, and tell spooky stories. And I'd be the youngest, I'd always be the one in tears. And then we'd run. Everybody, we used to have this saying called leg it. As soon as you hear someone say leg it, you just run, you know. And so, but yeah, so not far from there was a bridge next to a church called the Bonhoeffer Church. And when you go over that bridge, you were in a different, actually it was a different postcode. So you go over the bridge and you're in a different postcode. And not far from there was my school, my secondary school, Sydenham Girls' School on Dartmouth Road in Forest Hill. And yeah, so I went to that school from 76 to 81. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how was your education experience?
My education experience, wow. It was an experience. See, on the one hand, like at home, my dad, he was a record collector, and so he used to collect records, not just music, but speech records. And so he had this record called Black Family Day. It was from 1971, and it was a speech record of a Black family civil rights day in America. And so on the one hand, like I was sort of conscious and aware of Black civil rights and thing, but then at school, I felt like I was stripped away of my rights and whilst I was at school. So I had good days and bad days at school. I think by the time I reached the fourth year of secondary school, I opted not to wear school uniform anymore. I didn't want to wear any form of uniform. And in the early years, whilst I was at the school, it was kind of interesting because they put you in groups and streams, and I was in this stream where I was studying history, classical studies, religious education, physics, chemistry, biology, and English and maths. And I felt like it was a punishment because all my friends were studying like courses that I thought were really like interesting, and so once you get to the fourth year, you get to choose your options. And so I chose, I chose not to work towards like A-levels, but O-levels and A-levels. I chose to work for just a certificate of secondary education, which was a CSE, because I found those subjects more interesting for me. Yeah.
Thank you. And how would you describe the area of Lewisham more broadly at the time and the community?
At the time, my memories were from where I lived. It was we experienced racism. We experienced quite a lot of racism. I have memories of neighbours on one side, calling us names. Am I allowed to say the names? So you had neighbours on one side, sort of, not so much shouting, but like as soon as you go in the garden, they would say "Jungle Bunny," "Gollywog," and then on the neighbours on the other side would be singing like songs, that were clearly like offensive. And so we kind of like, myself and my sisters, we built up a resilience against that. And sometimes, like, you'd come home from school and there was like racist graffiti on your written on your door with dog's excrement. And so it must have been hard for my mum, really. It must have been hard for my mum because we were quite consciously aware of what racism was. And my mum's background was she came from Barbados, and she came from the Church of England background. And so she just wanted to assimilate and blend in, but you know, we weren't being allowed to anyway, you know. And so the area was quite racist, you know. I remember walking to the shops and seeing there's one man in particular. He was really tall, and as soon as he used to see us, he used to do like the Heil Hitler sign, and he had like an Alsatian dog, you know, and he'd let his dog bark at us, and so sometimes, you know, we kind of got used to his pattern of walking the dog, and so what we used to do is there was a letterbox on one side of the road, and we used to like get a piece of like thread and tie it to a milk bottle and put it on top of the letterbox, and then put the other side of the string like in the bush or something, so that when he walked past, the bottle would drop and smash. And so we used to sort of have our own way of sort of getting our own back at him, you know. And so, but yeah, you know, on a serious note, there was places like around Lewisham that you just couldn't go as a black person because you would experience racism. And it's, you know, those places are not that far from where you live, so you know, we weren't welcome in many places. So I think that's why we used to spend a lot of time in the park. We used to spend a lot of time in the park because, you know, when you go further afield and you sort of have to walk through a different area, then you're likely to be called names, you know. And even at school, you know, I experienced a friend invited us to her birthday party, and when we got there, at some point I heard her mum say, "Oh, I didn't realise that all of your friends were black," you know. And I just happened to hear because I was going to the toilet at the time, but. And so there's always that subtle, if not overt, then it was like really subtle kind of racism going on. And there were places that just weren't friendly in Lewisham. Yeah, it's changed a lot now. Yeah.
Thank you. So, as you just told us, you had a great awareness of racism because of your family specifically and the role of your dad in your life, and because of your daily experiences in Lewisham. But can you tell us a bit about what made you decide to join the march specifically with the Lewisham?
Yeah. I decided to join the march because on the day of the party, I was at the party. I met my cousin and my friends, and we met up, and then we went to the party, and three of them, the boys, they went inside, and myself and my other school friend, we were downstairs, and then she was saying that she had to go, you know, she had to go home. And so we asked the boys, or one of the boys, to walk us to the cab station on New Cross Road. And so we got the cab, and she went home and I went home, and then in the morning, a few hours later, I think it was, the phone was ringing, and it was one of the boys' mums asking me, have I seen her son? And I said, yeah, he's at the party. He was at a party, and then she started panicking, saying that there was a fire, you know, at the party. And then I think I stayed awake until I think the news came on really early in the morning. And then the next day, like, she still couldn't find him. She kept ringing and I said, I don't know, like, where he is. And then that's when I saw on the news, like, what had happened. And then my cousin, I call him my cousin because we're really close, he was missing as well. And then eventually I found out that he had died, and I think they recognised him by his dental, just by his dental record. And and so when I went to school, there was a girl, an English girl, and she said, she made a comment, and she said, "Oh, that's 13 less niggers we have to worry about. No, 12 less niggers we have to worry about." And I got really upset, like, about that. And then we had an argument, and then we had an assembly. And a couple of weeks later, there was an assembly. We had an assembly, and this was on the day of the march. Because in between that, I'd been going to Andrew's house, and his brother was burned as well in the fire. And myself and my friends, we used to just go to the house, and Mum used to let us just go into his bedroom. We just used to hang about in the room and just sit on the bed. And and I remember one day I was there, and the brother came in, and I just couldn't stop looking at his face, because I think at the time he had jumped out, and he was rubbing his face, thinking it was like dust and thing on his face, but he was actually rubbing off his skin off of his face, and so the pigmentation, had never come back. But at the time, it was very sore, and I kept looking at him, and I just remember passing out, and just collapsing and just waking up on the bed. And and then after that, it was like a case of just funerals, and I didn't really understand about all these funeral arrangements, because I was like 15 at the time, and and so, I think that on the day of the march, I started to hear about meetings that were taking place, and people were angry about it, and then on the day of the march, it was a school day, and I remember it was kind of raining, it was miserable and raining, and we got called to an assembly, and the whole assembly was about this march and what had happened. And then our headmistress said that after the assembly, she wants everybody to go to their lessons, and nobody's to leave the school premises. And then I just thought, there's no way that I'm going to a lesson after that, hearing that whole assembly. There's no way I could bear to just go into a classroom with a shut door and just be in that place for the whole day. And so I decided that, I asked some of my friends, if they're coming. They said no, they're not coming. And so I just, after everybody went to I waited around for everybody to go to their classes until the corridors were quiet and thing, and then I just decided I'm going to the march, and so it felt like a long walk to the gates of the school, because and I'm sure I didn't look behind me, I didn't look left or right, but I just felt that I was being watched, and I just walked towards the school gate, and it was one of these, I think it was about 7-foot wrought iron gate with spikes on the top. And I was thinking, how am I going to get out of here? And then there was a teacher at the gate, and he said to me, you know, I can't allow you to go through the gates. I said, yeah, I know. So then he said, well, are you planning on going to some? I said, yeah, I'm going to the march. And he said, how are you planning on getting out of the school? So I said, I'm climbing over the gate, you know, and he just looked at me and he just like winked at me, you know, as if to say, like, go for it, you know, but he couldn't really, you know, and so as soon as he winked at me, I just thought, okay, here we go. And then I just climbed like over the gate and then just headed for the bus garage there's a bus terminals in Forest Hill, and you can get a 171 bus straight to the Marquis of Granby, which is opposite Goldsmiths. And so I just got the bus there, and then I got off there, and then I saw a couple of my friends from school, the ones that was at the party, and then we just joined in like the rally at the house, and then we, when it was time, we just started walking, marching with people. Yeah. Mm.
Thank you for sharing this.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy to continue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how did you feel when you joined the march? What was the atmosphere?
I didn't really understand what was going on. You know, just people. There was just lots and lots and lots of people, and I just kept looking at people's faces. I just kept looking at people's faces to see if I knew anybody, and every now and again I'd recognise like faces of older teenagers or older people that, you know, I knew. So I felt like comfortable that I'm doing the right thing because all the right people I felt were there around me, kind of thing. And so it just ended up as me and just one friend. And then we just started to walk, you know. And I remember when we got to Blackfriars, like there was just things going on. It didn't seem like the march started to change, and you know, the march started to change, and we were people were just going in different directions, and then that went on right until the evening. We were just, I don't even know where we were because I didn't really know. Like once you get into that area, I didn't really know the city, and so we were just following just small crowds of people here and there, and you know. And so I don't know whether I didn't really understand, you know, what the march was, or you know, at the time. I just knew that I had to be there to, you know, represent my friends, and and I think we were there till it got dark. We were still there. All I remember was we were still there when it was dark. And when I got home, I think my mum or somebody said that they saw me on News at 6 or something like that. You know, and do you know what I mean? But it was like, I don't know, it was just, I don't know, it started off like with just people together, and then we ended up just in a small group of people. That ended up as just two of us, then we ended up making our way home. And then after that, you know, there was just so much stuff that I started to see in the newspapers, you know, and I kept, because we'd like been kind of like consciously aware of racism and civil rights and stuff like that, I started to look at the newspaper clippings, and I think one of them said a Black Day in Blackfriars, and I was thinking, what does that mean? That's, you know. And then whereas the local newspaper from around here, South London, said our march was marched with dignity, you know, and I was thinking like, huh? And so then I started to, any time a paper came out, I started to collect like clippings and headlines and stories, and you know, and started to just look and see how we were being like represented. And it was the same year. It was my final year at school, you know, 1981, and it was the same year as the uprisings in Brixton, and so that year for me was just I think it was it's like it was a change for me in terms of I am standing up for my rights now. I'm not, you know, I'm going to be doing work in my community. I'm going to be, you know, I became a lot more aware of the social surroundings, you know, and inequalities and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, it was just a year that, like, I used to listen to a lot of music, but the music I listened to was like artists like Curtis Mayfield and Nina Simone, and it was always songs of freedom or songs of struggle or songs of, you know, your people's rights. And so I kind of got more and more into my music, and I think for me that was a way of maybe even coping with it, because every time anything came up about the New Cross fire, you know, it was emotional, it was traumatizing, and I was a teenager, you know, and my friends we were teenagers, and nobody counselled us, nobody offered us any therapy, nobody, you know, there weren't no healing process for us at all, you know, and so I guess even now, you know, I find it really emotional to talk about, you know, and I wasn't, you know, a family member of anybody, so, you know, it must be just as, you know, 100 times worse for them. But, you know, there was a group of us, that young people that, you know, we didn't receive any counselling or anything like that, and so it's like living with trauma and stress, and every single time it comes up, you relive the memory, and you relive the trauma, and you relive all the experiences over and over and over and over again. And you know, we're talking decades now, but it still feels like it was like, you know, yesterday.
Thank you. So you said a lot about the impact of these events on you personally, and also on other people like you, so on the community. And how would you describe the impact it had on the UK? Because obviously the Black People's Day of Action is referred to as a key event for the history of Black people in the UK. But how would you describe
I think a week or so later there was a fire in Ireland, and some teenagers, you know, perished in that incident. And I think Margaret Thatcher, or the Prime Minister at the time, sent her condolences, and I think the Queen may have sent her condolences, and like it was on the news, it was in the headlines, and it was a lot of sympathy. There was a lot of outpour from the public of sympathy, and you know, for me, it just made me angry because, you know, nothing was said about what had happened in New Cross. And the things that were said was, it was painted in a negative way, you know, when we try to express ourselves through the Day of Action. You know, we were described as a mob or rioting, or, you know, if you look at the headlines, you'll see the way that they described us. You know, when I say us, I mean, you know, me. And so it was a case of, you know, just me becoming even more aware of inequalities, you know, and becoming more interested in equality, you know, and justice and that kind of thing. And I think that has, you know, it's kind of steered me to, I guess, who and I am and how I think, like now, and what I do, and what's important, what I consider to be important. Yeah.
And you said you didn't really get any forms of support from what you went through, and no recognition as well from institution, but was there any way that the community, do you think this created any kind of forms of connection within the community, or maybe ways you supported each other through this event?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like a incident such as that and the way it was dealt with, it built a lot of mistrust, within the authorities, against the police. It pulled people sort of closer together because we had things in common. We were there, and sometimes we'd go to some meetings and you'll see the same people. So you'd get a bit of comfort knowing that there's somebody else there that went through some trauma, like trauma that I may have been through, and other people may have been through the same thing. So but genuinely, I think that it kind of made people sort of acknowledge each other more, and I think that it kind of brought the community closer together. Because there were teenagers from all areas, lots of different areas throughout the whole of Lewisham and even out of Lewisham that it affected. And so I think that I guess for me the impact was that I could see like a community that was traumatized, and maybe still living with trauma now. Yeah.
Yeah. About these, I know I watched a YouTube video with an introduction to the Rastafari Movement UK, where you speak about how your aim with the movement is the healing and repairing of these trauma and pain that has historical roots. So what is the connection between your work now and the Black People's Day eruption? How do you see that?
I think that having had that lived experience I am very perceptive to, I guess, other people's traumas. I can recognize it. And so maybe I'm an empath, I don't know. But, when there's a saying, who feels it knows it. And so I want to do like work that is empowering and almost like giving people a sense of release and freedom from whatever the trauma is. And so the work that I do now is, it's around food, but it's also around well-being. So the project is a food and well-being. And, and so the well-being side of it is spiritual well-being, economic well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being. And so, people will come to us with a whole range of different situations. And it's always been about, having a conversation with somebody and listening and hearing and feeling, what the person's feeling, and then like talking and coming up with solutions like together. And then so, my organisation can then maybe make connections, with other organisations or signpost or support that person towards the pathway to, where they need to get to next. And so, and I think that, again, I think it's all to do with that whole notion of justice or injustice. And I guess, for me, it's like, that experience, the experience that I had in 81, and, right from having the comments made from that person, like in the school, to, climbing over that fence and thinking, I have to go, this is something that I have to do, as part of my community. And then when I arrived and seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other people, you know, it made me feel like, yeah, I did the right thing, you know, and it's good, it's good that, you should follow your, like, instinct. And so, when, people come to my organisation now, and I know that it must have taken a lot for them to either pick up the phone or approach us or, and so I feel like humbled, when someone comes and shares with me because, I know what it's like not to have someone to share with, and so that kind of drives me. That's like a driving thing for me. So, yeah, I have time for people. Yeah.
Thank you. For your activities, you're trying to practice this form of care, holistic care, I would say, for the community. And so if you have to think about the community of Dushan today, because you've also mentioned that it has changed a lot through the years, and maybe your hopes for this community, what would you say?
There's an elder in Lewisham called Jashaka, and occasionally I go and talk to him, and we sit down and talk. And I remember one day we were sitting outside his house, and we were just sitting on the wall talking, and I was saying to him, so what is it then? What do I need to do, to keep on doing my work, and he's an elder to me as a Rastafari, and he just said to me, it's really simple, it's not complicated at all. And then he said to me, just practice love and kindness, just love and kindness, and just do that, just do love and kindness, and to everybody, no matter who they are or where they're from, just practice love and kindness. And so I guess that's the essence of the work that I do, and I think that's what I try to emulate in the work that I do. And I see that Lewisham has changed, a lot from when I was born in Sydenham in '65 till now. It's changed a lot, and there is more, I believe, love and kindness and tolerance, in the borough. And so I guess my hopes and dreams is that that it just keeps going, it spreads, and we all learn that it doesn't, life is not that complicated really, and we have so many layers like put on top of us through our experiences in life, through media, through, that try to define who we are, but like deep down, when you tap in like deeply, there is this thing inside of everybody which is love and kindness. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, to conclude with, I would like to ask you, if you had to organize or think about a Black People's Day of Action in 2022, what would it be about?
In 2022, it would be about healing and repair. Yeah, it would be about healing and repair. And it would be healing and repair physically, mentally, economically, historically. It would just be a holistic healing and repair. And it would be a day of action of healing and repair.